Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. This is a special night for Casey.
There's a lot of
When we
people
first brought
here.
Casey on, we kind of knew that
They're
he was a diamond in the
all
rough.
looking
Were
at
we
me.
wrong? This guy is outstanding.
Why are
Some
they
of the
giving me
things that
this
he was
award
able to teach
anyway?
Some of us know nothings. We're just
Any
it was
second now,
amazing.
they're going to
We
realize that I'm
didn't
not very
know
good
the
at
way that
this.
he presented himself, the way
Anybody
that
could have
he
done
just was
this.
awesome in every single step.
Why am I the one?
It's so amazing. I mean, if anyone deserves this award, it's Casey.
Welcome back to WizNugs. Today we're talking about imposter syndrome. For those of you who are unaware, you're lucky. Imposter syndrome is basically the feeling of not being deserving of any praise or accolades or accomplishments because they're due to outside factors or luck, or that people are going to figure out that you're a fraud at the things that they think you're good at. Today we're going to go over some examples of how to identify your imposter syndrome triggers and then some strategies to help overcome this in your life.
So I have a very clear-cut time in my life, and it wasn't really that long ago, where I felt that imposter syndrome kind of take over. So when I left my previous job and I came to where I'm at now, I was offered the job at a higher title than what the job was initially posted for. And when I came in at that higher title, I was like, I don't know if I'm actually this level or not. I mean, I know what I know, but is that really this level? I don't know. I've never been this level before. I think I'm going to come in and they're going to be like, oh, well, it turns out that we over-evaluated you and you're
Oh, no.
really not that high. So,
We made a mistake.
yeah, we'll keep you on, but we're actually going to knock you down and we're only going to offer you this much pay now because we've reevaluated your abilities. So the first week or two, it was really like walking on eggshells for me. At least that's how I felt, because I just felt like I'm going to mess up something in this, very interim stage of employment, and they're going to say, "No, you know what? No, we're going to take this back."
First of all, when you start a new job, sometimes it's even an explicit probation period, so it can be like really nerve-wracking. There's also that certain sense of like everybody's paying closer attention to you than they ordinarily would. Right. And I think that's one of the big drivers behind imposter syndrome is this sense that other people are thinking about you constantly. Because we are inside our own heads, so we're thinking about us constantly and just assuming that everyone else is also.
If you come from an environment where you're really not ever getting praise and no one's really recognizing the job you do, you don't necessarily hear anything negative either, but you're just not getting any feedback either way. So we go into our own head, into our own mind, and we start thinking like, oh, are they not saying anything to me because they're thinking of ways to let me go? Are they thinking of like, how do we let him know that we think that he's terrible and he's awful and we need to get rid of him, but we feel bad for him because, look at him, he's just a terrible case of a person, right? Again, it's the snowball, rabbit hole effect.
Yeah, and a lot of this is caused by rumination and isolation. And when we don't talk to people about our feelings, when we don't think about the truth of the situation, because we're not thinking about truth, we're not thinking about facts, we're thinking about feelings. And as we've discussed many times before, feelings are not necessarily a solid reflection of actual truth and fact.
I think even in the case like I described, if you're coming from an environment where you get no feedback, and then you go into a new environment and everyone's all of a sudden pouring accolades onto you, you're like, what is this all about? I don't deserve that. I'm just doing what I've always done, and I've never got any recognition for that before. So something's going on here.
Or childhood experiences of like, I can say as a grown-up gifted kid, that's something where when you have the ability to do well in school without really trying, it can be awkward and off-putting to be praised for getting good grades when you don't really have to work for them. So what am I being praised for?
Right.
Just showing up. Why am I getting praised for that? And, I realize this isn't something that, necessarily everybody's going to be going through, but that's one of the causes of imposter syndrome.
You bringing that up, it reminds me of being in eighth grade in the eighth grade history class, Mr. Rittenhouse. And Mr. Rittenhouse loved to give reenactments of historical moments. And I thought they were exciting and engaging, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Now, I was in the minority of the class that thought that, but everything from the lectures was what was on the test. So if you paid attention to the lecture, then it was a breeze.
Yeah.
So every single test was like A, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy. And then the rest, not the rest of the class, but the majority of the rest of the class sees D's on these tests because they weren't paying attention, because they weren't engaged. So talking about that gifted mentality, like I didn't do anything. I just listened. I just paid attention. There was nothing hard about this class. But they were like, oh, you schoolboy. Oh, you're just a schoolboy. Teacher's pet. Now, again, those names are probably not even used anymore. They were used when I was in school.
Well, and it's one of those things that can cause that rift where you do start ruminating on these things and you start thinking about, like, is this really how I want to be? Is this how I want to be perceived? And because people are paying very close attention to you in that moment to reject you, that's one of those things that sticks with you over time. And then that becomes the voice in the back of your head that everyone's looking at you. And one of these days they're going to figure it out.
Yep.
There's also a certain sense in which society expects that the people who are, like the greats, I'm picturing like Paul McCartney and the Beatles, like that when they're writing songs and performing, they don't have to work at it. They just show up because they're amazing. And they weren't always that way.
Right.
But I have an expectation that they can just do this. So when I have to put in effort myself and practice the guitar, I start to think, well, I'm not really very good because I have to work really hard at this. I have to try. And that's one of those things where you see your own effort, but you don't see other people's effort.
If we take the work example, there's a Saturday Night Live skit where Jimmy Fallon was the tech guy. It was an office scene. People would come in and they're working. Oh, my thing isn't working. I can't get it to work. Call the tech guy. And they're like, oh, I don't want to get him in here. And he's like already at the door.
Yeah.
And he goes over there. He's like, move. Done. It's fixed. And so when you come in with like, oh, we hired a senior dev, and you come in here, the expectation is I'm going to go and they're going to say, hey, we got this big problem, and we've been working on it for a while. We just can't figure out. Move.
We need the senior dev to come in and fix it.
And this has happened. Well, you're the senior dev here, and we expect you to do a little bit more than what everyone else is doing around here. And like, okay.
I'm reminded of a graph that I saw.
Okay.
I'm not going to be able to do it justice, so maybe if I can find it, I'll put it up. Basically, the graph looks something like when you're a complete newbie at doing something and you don't really know anything at all, you sometimes have a tendency to think that you're amazing at it. Like drawing. They start drawing and they go, well, I can sketch and I have fun with this. And then they decide that they want to start studying it and do more. Mm-hmm. And then they learn just how hard it is. That takes a lot of work and study and practice. And they start to go, wow, I thought I was pretty good at this, but now I think I suck.
Yeah.
And then you get to that point where as you're learning and you get better, you're still comparing yourself to the people that are better than you. So it's really easy to get into that mode of comparison and say, well, okay, yeah, I'm better than that person, but that person's like, they're awful. They don't know anything. I'm nowhere near as good as these people.
Right.
And that's kind of where I got to with guitar, in my own mind at least, is I can play some. I'm better than I was. I'm not an absolute novice who can't pick it up and doesn't even know what to do with their hands. I can play without looking at the fretboard. That's pretty cool to me. But I think about like the people that really know how to play the instrument, and I just feel like a complete just waste.
So what it makes me think about is you're young, you're a kid, and you start learning how to do a thing, and then you show your parents. And then the next family gathering is, come on, everybody, come on. Hey, Casey, can you play that thing that you learned on the piano and show me what you did? And then you go over there, and it's like, bing, boom, boom, and it sounds okay for the first time I've ever learned how to play anything on the piano,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So my grandma had a Casio keyboard, and she'd use it for. She was a songwriter, and she performed at church and stuff of that nature, and she knew how to write music, and so she's like, if you want to play with it every once in a while, that's fine. You're a trustworthy kid. I know that you're not going to break things. I'm like, okay.
Turn on the auto beat.
So I learned from ear how to play a little bit of Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop, the theme song from the first movie.
Okay.
I learned how to play a little bit of that, right? And then I also learned how to play a little bit of the chorus of "Take on Me" from Aha, from just by listening to the radio and then picking it out,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so the very first time I was like, hey, I showed my siblings. Look at this, dee, and then I did it, and they're like, oh, that's great, that's awesome. You should show grandma. And I'm like, oh, okay, and I'll show grandma. She's like, oh, that's really great. You learned how to, playing it by ear, yeah. And then the next event was like, hey, everybody, come listen to Cisco play this. And I'm like,
Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
da, 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 da.
and I'm doing this, right? I'm not playing the piano. I'm finger
Yeah, just plunking it out.
plunking at it, right? And so I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, that's cute. And then to me, it's like, ooh.
I just got dismissed. Yep.
Yeah.
Or worse, you end up with like your age group peers, your cousins and whatever, going, "That's stupid."
Imposter syndrome can grow from that. Someone propped you up, and then when you went to go show your performance, not everybody thought that you were that great of a piano player. And now there's like, oh, they think I'm terrible. I'm never going to do this again.
I must be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this can have effects on career. If you always walk through this job going, I'm not a senior. They don't think because then at that point, it's really easy to like push off the big projects or the hard work and just be like, if I take on a project that is actually difficult, that is actually a senior level project, I'm going to mess it up, and they're going to see that I'm not a senior level dev, and then they're going to find out and like fire me or demote me or something. And so there's a tendency, not everyone does this, but there's a tendency with imposter syndrome to avoid places where you might be challenged, places where you could actually really grow and learn new things. And maybe if you're not quite senior, but you're close, maybe that would put you over the top. Or maybe it's that opportunity to really work at it.
Right.
To practice and learn how to play a real song in an actual like hand position that is recognized by other musicians. Things like that can be really useful as growing experiences. But if we have that kind of fixed mindset that I'm not very good at this and I should not be looked at for this, I shouldn't be put myself out there. Mm-hmm. It can also cause problems with relationships.
Yeah. So what's an example of that?
If you have this feeling that, well, my wife is just hanging around out of sympathy. She doesn't really love me. She's just here because she has to be here because, like breaking up would be harder.
She must have thought that I was somebody else when she got with me, but now she knows the truth.
I'm just a charity case.
Yeah.
Or that my kids say, "Hey, I love you, Dad. You're a great dad," but I'm not really. I'm just me, and I'm not very good at what I do, and I fail at a lot of things, and I screw up, and sometimes I yell at my kids, and I'm not a good dad. I'm kind of awful.
And then so you go through these relationships and you're having these negative thoughts, and let's say it's a worst case scenario and the marriage does dissolve. Then it just confirmed everything you ever felt about yourself. Yeah, she found out, she finally realized that I'm not worth it, and she no longer wants to take pity on me, and I don't know why she was ever with me, and my kids are now going to realize that I'm not a good dad, and you let this like rumination happen, and you continue to let it build up to the point that it stops you from becoming or being the person that you want to be.
It may not be a relationship ending type of imposter syndrome or feeling. It may be straining the relationship in the sense that you're always seeking external validation.
Right.
Because you need somebody else to reassure you that you're actually okay. Because you're always picturing yourself down here when really you're at least up here. And so you're looking at the people that are up here going, am I good enough? Am I okay? Did I do a good job? I Man, I still have those moments where it's like, hey, I emptied the dishwasher. Did you see? Did you see? Please appreciate me.
Going back to somebody that I've given advice to, they just had the relationship end recently, and they are talking about, yeah, I'm getting to see my child. At least that's good, but the mother of my child, the person I broke up with, doesn't really want to have conversations with me. And if we do have conversations, it's telling me what a terrible person I am. And it's what a terrible place to be.
Sounds like a good relationship to be out of.
Yeah, I agree, right? Being the third person and being able to see it from that third person point of view, like you didn't want to be in that relationship anyway. Because if the person was looking for reasons to say that you're not good and you're a terrible person, you're a terrible dad, or whatever that nature, you don't want to be in that relationship, because if you're already a person who has doubts of self-worth and you're trying to get yourself out of it, having someone coming down on top of you it's not helpful at all. So you're in the moment. It just happened. It's fresh. First thing on your mind every morning. It's going to be a hard thing to get over. But in the long run, it is a better position for you to be in, because you can get past the negative thoughts. You can get past the imposter syndrome feeling and start focusing on the person that you want to be and be that person.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty, the things that are actually going to help people to deal with this. First step is recognizing what your triggers are. If you can figure out what causes you to have one of these, whether it's an episode or a moment or this, just kind of this thought pattern, you can start to challenge it. But first you have to be able to recognize it when it comes.
Right.
So one important thing for that is journaling can be huge, that when you notice that you're having that moment, write it down. Write down what actually got you there. It could be a compliment or an accolade of some sort, an award. If somebody, I don't know, gave you a like on your Facebook post.
I think of it like at work. That code you put in last sprint? Yeah. Well, it turns out there was a bug. And it's not a big thing. I mean, we're able to fix it, but just be aware that there was a bug that happened. And instantly for me, it's like, oh, they found out. I'm not that good. They realize now that I'm really not as good of a programmer as they said I was, or at least I thought they thought of me as. And now they know that I'm subpar. And what does that mean? I have to start looking for a new job now.
So that reminds me of this list of cognitive distortions.
Okay.
That I got from my therapist, actually. And there's a list of common ones. I think that would be a wonderful thing to get into at some point in the future and just do like a straight up like expose on some of these top cognitive distortions. But this one specifically is known as catastrophizing. It's when something comes up, your mind goes to the worst case scenario and you start to think about, well, yeah, this means that I'm going to get fired, or this means that my wife is going to leave me. This means that my friendship is over. We just had a fight. Obviously, we're done. I'm never going to see this person again.
Right.
And the truth is, most things in life have bumps in the road. There's challenges. There are issues. There's trials. There's hardships. These things happen. And if they haven't happened to you yet, they're going to happen.
Right. It's a guarantee.
Question is, what are you going to do about it when it comes? And if you're always thinking of the worst possible scenario when something comes, that's tough. That's a tough way to live. So recognizing what your triggers are is that first step.
Yep.
Journaling can be really good for figuring out some of these moments, but then really the power comes in reflecting on these past experiences to be able to go back and say, okay, in the past, have I had an argument with somebody? Did it end up with, I never want to see you again. I hate your guts. You're dead to me. Well, probably not. You can look at and challenge some of these assumptions, some of these cognitive distortions with actual historical facts from your life.
Right. So I think about when I get into that point where like, oh, I had a bug or something didn't go quite right, and I start getting into this mindset of, okay, well now they know that I'm not that good. I'm like, wait a minute. You didn't get here by accident.
Yep.
You got here through hard work and effort. And then I go back and I think about the times at other places where they're like, this is awesome. This works perfect. This was great. Wait, you're done with that already? And I start remembering those times, right? One of the persons in our career life, we both had a mentor. She gave me multiple accolades throughout the time that I worked with her at our previous employment, and getting accolades from her was like manna from the gods, because she was, to me, such an immaculate professional when it came to sequel development, that I was just like this. Any accolade I get from her is outstanding, and then it solidifies my position that I currently have at my rank, my title.
Yeah. So reflecting on past experience can let you know, okay, wait a minute, bugs happen. Is the expectation that I'm never going to make a mistake ever? Do I also walk on water? Like what's the expectation here? That reminds me of an experience that I had with a coworker where they specifically told somebody in front of me, "Oh, we don't compliment Casey because he already knows he's good and we don't want him to get arrogant."
What a terrible thing to say.
So she never gave me compliments. We worked together closely and she never would say, "Hey, you did a great job. That's really awesome. Hey, nice work." That kind of stuff would have been amazing, but she assumed, because I wasn't like cowering in fear every day, that I don't want praise. I don't need praise. It's not helpful to me to know that people appreciate me. Everybody likes to be appreciated.
On that note, I think another way to be able to deal with the imposter syndrome is accept compliments. Assume that they're genuine. And it's not them like giving you a secret hint that, oh, I really know that you're not that good, but I'm going to tell you that you're okay. Be willing to accept that compliment, and it's like, thank you. Thank you for giving me the compliment.
And one way of working on that is to give compliments yourself.
Yeah.
When you notice something good that somebody else has done, say so. And you'll see how that feels for them. If you can create a culture in your workplace or your school or your family of noticing and complimenting, that's amazing.
To me, that goes back to our episode talking about gratitude. And so there's
It's powerful.
There's a particular table that my good friend over here developed, and it deals with dates, and it does all kinds of really cool conversions. And every single time I get to use that to make my coding so much easier, I lean over and say, "Hey, thank you. Thank you for that awesome table that you did, because this thing makes things so much easier. I don't have to call this function that calls this proc that looks at this view. It's like, nope, look at that table, got what I need. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gray."
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That highlights the importance of self-awareness, that being aware of where you're at and your true strengths, having a sense of that can be just immeasurably helpful. It also helps to be mindful of when you are in those loops of negative self-talk, when you don't even notice it sometimes, but the voice in the back of your head is doing that thing, that thing that says, "Oh, they don't really mean that.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Nope. Remember when somebody said that you weren't very good? That is the truth."
Yeah.
And even if you're told 100 times that you're really awesome, that one time that you're told that you're not very good, that sticks with you.
Yeah. Go back to the story or the example that I gave talking about when I felt this imposter syndrome. The resolution for me was actually having to do some problem solving on some tickets that came in, and then writing the script out. And I at that time, I didn't have permissions to run stuff myself, right? I had to prove that I was going to be trustworthy,
The new guy.
right? So I had to give it to people who were technically juniors to me to validate that my code was okay. And I'm like, okay, here's the big moment. Here's the big moment when they're like, this is garbage. But what ended up happening was like, what is this? How does this even work? I don't understand what this does, but I know that the answer is right, so it's okay. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a senior.
So one of the key strategies to help overcome imposter syndrome is to change your mindset by reframing your thoughts in a different way. Mm-hmm. If you can adopt a growth mindset, which is sometimes referred to as the yet method.
Okay.
So you can say, "I don't know how to play the piano yet," rather than saying, "I don't know. I can't do that. I can't do that yet. I don't know if I'm there yet." Another strategy is to embrace challenges. New things are going to come. They're going to be opportunities to practice, to grow, to learn. Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't get those big old muscles from sitting on his couch waiting.
Right.
He was at the gym. He may have had a little help, but he was at the gym picking up heavy things.
Blasphemy. It was all natural.
And then as we talked about, especially in our episode on Stoicism, that learning from failure is a huge tool, that the obstacle is the way,
Right.
the Stoics would say.
So I think about it, like you say, take on that new project, the big thing. So at work, maybe you don't know all of the ways to be able to handle the new project that's coming down, but take the opportunity to learn, right? Take the project, do what you can. If you get to a point where you hit that obstacle, okay, I'm going to achieve a new thing. I'm going to learn a new thing. I'm going to get over or through this obstacle. And so maybe it's simple as Google. Maybe it's me leaning across the aisle or over the top of the cubicle and say, hey, I'm working on this thing. Have you ever worked with this thing before? And then finding the new way to do it and then getting it done. And then being able to present it and say, look, I did this thing. Ta-da!
And to be able to give those kudos and those accolades to the people around you who helped you there.
Correct.
Recognizing that success isn't a one-person operation.
Right.
Also, I mentioned before cognitive distortions. If you can recognize when you're having cognitive distortions, like all or nothing thinking, catastrophizing, that you can replace them with positive thoughts.
Right.
Or at least realistic thoughts. Because as we all know, yes, there are negatives in life, but there are also lots of positives. And so if you're only looking on the negative side, it could be a sign that you're missing out on some of the other sweeter things in life. Some other techniques that I don't think we have time to go over in this video include positive affirmations and visualization techniques. Mm-hmm. Also recognizing when you do have positive achievements, when you do have good things that you've done, that you have people that you can share them with that may not be like this coworker who said, we don't tell Casey that he's good at things.
Right.
Or you could have those people that will support you and be like, wow, that's awesome. Great job. It's helpful to set realistic action plans and goals for what you want to work on. And then, break them down into smaller chunks, like we've said, and work on achieving them. When you do that, you can see that's another, notch in your belt. That's another accomplishment you can put in your achievements journal and say, I am capable of doing things. When you have that confidence that comes from actually making things happen, you're less likely to feel like a fraud about the things that you accomplish.
Now, remember that you actually did the work to get there. You put in the effort. You put in the time, right? And so you're not there by accident. You're not there because somebody took pity on you. You're not there because, well, I was the janitor at the company and somebody killed over dead at their desk and they're like, hey, you want a job? And you ended up getting the job completely by some weird accidental event. No, you put in the effort, you put in the time, and you have earned the right to at least be in the job and prove that you are the good person that you are.
Focusing on the effort and the process is another one of these perfect techniques to get through something like this, because it might not be about the overall achievement or the finish line, but celebrating the little wins, the incremental improvements, and taking joy in the process itself. Those can all be very powerful tools to building a solid and sustainable mindset.
So in summation, we all have moments in our life where we feel that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, and gosh darn it, people don't like us. But the reality is that we did put in effort and we got to where we are because of that effort. So recognize the signs of when you start to feel that imposter syndrome comes along, and then be cognizant of the fact that, no. I'm not an imposter. I'm here with intention and purpose, and I know that I can do this thing.
Recognize that many people feel like an imposter sometimes, and being able to talk about it openly can really be helpful to get that ball rolling. I recommend picking one of these strategies that we've talked about, or maybe one that you hear about elsewhere, and just give it a shot. Let us know how it goes in the comments.
We want to thank you for joining us again on WizNugs, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today on WizNugs. If you liked what you heard, spread the word. For more information, head over to myWizNugs.com.
There's a great Snoop Dogg song. There's no one better to be than myself.